Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One hardly knows how to orient that particular mishmash of, one would say ideas, but I think that would be a bit too generous. But I will attempt to bring a bit of clarity.
No apologies there.
To some of that stream of consciousness or unconsciousness that we just heard. The first thing, sir, I want to clarify with respect to this blue-green bank, which has been sometime in the making, sometime in the discussion, and I'll say a little bit about the background and the history, the ideology of that. But I want to bring some sense, if I can, to some of the utterances of the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, who is aiming to suggest through you to the people of Barbados that this bank springs, in his words, from a relationship with the International Monetary Fund. And, sir, it is so important if one pretends to any ideas of leadership of a sovereign nation, to have a sense of the lay of the land, to be able to understand the international financial and development structure of the world and of her or his own country. It is very important if one aims to lead a people to orient oneself to these ideas. And so let me first say that the blue-green bank that was so ably presented by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central does count on some capitalization from the Resilience and Sustainability Fund of the International Monetary Fund. But it certainly does not spring from a relationship with the IMF. But in that regard, I think there is something that a person who would want or try to be a leader first of an institution, let's get that out of the way first, and then of a country, must understand. And we keep hearing that this criticism is done on behalf of the people of Barbados. I mean, I'm not even sure that it is done on behalf of the people of George Street. But he may want to try his key to see if those people still consider that he speaks on their behalf. But, sir, I want us to clarify that the boogeyman of the IMF that people have set up in the past, I dare say, is not the IMF that exists today. And the fact is that the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, the Honourable Prime Minister, and the team that works with her, I don't think it is bragging to suggest that Barbados has had an impact on the nature and the structure and the approach of no less an institution than the International Monetary Fund. We saw it as we were preparing to put together the economic package and set of policies as a new government coming to service in 2018. We saw that we were able to say to the fund, and I keep saying to people, this is not, the fund that we are engaged with in a conversation is not your grandmother's IMF. And what do I mean by that? We saw the structural adjustment policies of the late 80s and the 90s. Many of us lived through them. We saw the impact they had in Jamaica. We saw the impact they had right here in Barbados. We saw the impact around the world. It is one of the reasons why we are calling for a renewed global international financial system, but this call for a renewed international global financial system, I dare say, is not a new one, and I will come to that. But a country like Barbados, small as it is, was able to say to the IMF, look, notwithstanding that we will engage with you, we want you to understand that we determine that pensions must increase. We determine, before we sign anything or go anywhere, that free tertiary education must be restored to the young people of Barbados. We determine that welfare payments must increase. Now let us hear you on some of the things that you want to suggest as part of an extended fund facility. And so this very resilience and sustainability trust, this resilience and sustainability fund that was established, on which this Blue-Green Bank draws, came out of conversations with no less a country than Barbados. Came out of conversations with little Barbados. And a lot of the reorientation of the IMF towards sustainability, towards resilience, the same words that the Honourable Member for Christchurch South doesn't like, but that means something, whether he likes it or not. The fact is that this very facility came out of those conversations in a context where the IMF was led very much in its orientation and its new dispensation to resilience and sustainability, things that other development banks really had dropped the ball on in some cases, and is now reorienting itself to say, look, we can't just go into countries and suggest cutting wages and salaries, cutting social expenditure. It's not the same institution, and that kind of institution will not survive. That kind of institution will not find any favor or will not find any safe harbor in a country like Barbados that is concerned with providing all of the necessary requirements for the well-being of its citizens. And so, rather than this notion that this bank springs from a relationship with the IMF, it actually comes from the understanding among those who work with the government of Barbados and those in the government of Barbados that we have to have a new approach to how we finance our own development and stop waiting for people to come in and lend us some money and hope for the best. But sir, I realize that in situations where certain speakers cannot rely on a real substantive dismissal of an argument or real substantive disagreement on content, we have the approach, sir, that is associated with a famous chicken that many of us might know. The sky is falling. You remember that chicken? It's a famous chicken. Chicken licking. Oh dear. You feel a little something, the sky must be falling. And instead of being able to satisfy people that this is what is coming and hitting you, look, it is here, it is just notions that something bad will happen. You will find that approach in other governments, in other populist movements that are taking hold around the world that have no regard. Notwithstanding what they tell you, they actually are not interested at all in the well-being of the country. Just to be able to swing it away from the path of development into fear and destruction and anxiety, and to think that that is what will drive people. But Barbadians know what it is to be inspired and to provide inspiration to a government that helps lead it. And so I am not concerned that the chicken licking, chicken little, Chicken Little. But this one might be a chicken licking. Chicken licking? Something so. I am not too concerned about that approach damaging the Barbadian ethos and the Barbadian spirit, because it is stronger than that. Sir, I've been in development economics and development for almost 25 years, notwithstanding what I'm told my plats suggest. And in those 25 years, sir, we have seen an evolution in what development means and how we go about the business of development. Sir, we used to be told, and I remember the conversations, trying to structure projects and being told that you have to separate the climate argument from the development argument. And the honorable member for St. Michael South will know this well. You were being told by development banks, you were being told by international financial institutions, if you are doing climate and environment, it has to be about science. It has to be about the emissions, and it has to be about the ocean, and it has to be, I want to see the climate argument. And they used to say famously, to my horror, climate is not development. There are those of us in this business for over 20 years that remember that. Sir, I came to an institution in this region to work almost, I won't call the amount of years, some years ago now. I won't call the number of years. And I was responsible for an area that they were calling poverty reduction and economic security. Except that they said to me, you are working in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean? There's no poverty there. That's what they said. There's no poverty there. So you can't get money to spend. The money that we have as a global institution is going to Asia and is going to Africa, and do your best with this fine change here. That's what they said. And the way that I responded was to say, all right, you know what? People who are in vulnerable situations, people that are in insecure housing, people that live in communities where the ground is shifting, people who have certain kinds of deprivations, guess what? Those people are most vulnerable to changes in climate. So here what is going to happen now. I'm going to ask you for some of this climate money to deal with some of the deprivations related to infrastructure and housing and so on that these populations, these vulnerable populations, are experiencing. Sir, I had to make the argument for climate finance to deal with poverty and economic insecurity 15 years ago. This is not new. But it is an idea whose time has finally come in ways that can have meaning for the people of this region and other people around the world who live in climate vulnerable countries. And so what we have now is a situation where the world is finally realizing that the climate response is not just about the science. Yes, we need to control emissions. Yes, we need to limit warming. But we need to do those things not just to protect the planet for future generations, because we also need to make sure there's intergenerational fairness. Not just fairness among the people who occupy the planet today, but among the people who, between us and the people who are not yet born. Intergenerational fairness. We are only custodians of this planet. We have to keep it in good order for the people to come. But finally, we realize that climate and development cannot be separated because we live on the planet. And when things start to happen, there is nowhere to go and hide. Look at the turbulence in the skies. Look at the planes that are being tossed around. Look at the ships that are being tossed around. One time you could build an ocean-going vessel and be confident that it is not going to capsize. The things out there looking like fishing boats, sir. Looking like the same jet skis, and you all remember St. Michael South, for St. Michael West Central came to address the other day. We live on this planet, and so any security that we are trying to bring about for people is taking place in the context of a changing planet. And so all of that is development. And so this Blue-Green Bank is absolutely a development bank, but it is development that is focused on the real root of the problem. What were we doing before? I worked, sir, at a development bank earlier that was responsible for 19 borrowing members in this region. I recall, sir, going on a mission to one of those borrowing members and driving across a bridge where there was a sign that said, "This bridge is being refurbished, repaired," and it had the names of the development banks on the sign. Because, you know, international financial institutions love to brand development. And it had the names on the sign. This bridge is being repaired by these institutions. Sir, within 3 weeks, that bridge had been destroyed in a hurricane. And 3 weeks after that, I was back in the country. And I couldn't cross the bridge, but I visited the bridge. Sir, and there was another sign, and there was another set of banks, and another set of donors that country now had to pay again for the same bridge. So that was 2 loans, sir. And so when a country is caught up in that vicious cycle of borrowing to adapt to a climate crisis, to stronger, more destructive hurricanes, where is the space for development? Climate is development. And so it occurred to me then, or it was solidified in my brain then, that the way that international financial institutions develop instruments, the kinds of things that they sell to countries, those have to change. Because otherwise it is just a new colonialism, where countries like us are simply dependent on loans at 10 and 15-year repayment at 6 and 7% interest rate until another hurricane comes along and destroys another bridge or another road, and we are caught in that cycle again. But this Blue-Green Bank and what underpins it suggests a different financial model. It says that actually there is such a thing as sustainable climate investment that we do ourselves. I must correct the once again errant honorable leader of the opposition, that this is not about Barbados being indebted to other countries. This is about being able to capitalize a domestic, in the first instance, and regional financial institution where we set the terms of how we build out a sustainable industry. Sir, when I was first introduced to development around environment and climate, one of the portfolios we had was called Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. I don't know who recalls that. Energy efficiency and renewable energy. And somewhere along the line, I think we lost the conversation about energy efficiency. But we know from more research that actually the contribution of energy efficiency, making sure that we lose less power in transition, is actually going to take us quite a ways to where we need to go in terms of limiting emissions and addressing some of the financial burden that is associated with spend on fossil fuels. Sir, it means that a country, a world, must be re-engineered in all of its practices, the way we live, the way we do business, the way we manufacture. Everything that we do needs to transition along that path. It has to come from inside out. And the only way that we will have an inclusive growth out of this is if we lead it, is if we are able to attract and establish companies that are able to help us in that energy transition. One of the things we know, for example, sir, is that DC power transmission incurs lower power losses than AC power transmission, which means increased efficiency. So what will it take to be able to transition from AC to DC power? This is the substance of what we're talking about here. Where is the company? Where are the individuals? What is the process by which, through access to the kind of capital that is available through the Blue-Green Bank, we will be able to see that transition across industries in Barbados and the region? That is the substance of this sustainability and resilience, words that apparently the Honorable Leader of the Opposition does not understand. This is what they mean. And so that, you know, sir, you will have heard the Honorable Member for St. Michael North East, the Honorable Prime Minister, make reference to the fact that one of the reasons for these sick buildings that we are seeing has to do, yes, with new norms in construction, and perhaps that is a conversation for another day. But you will have heard her say that it also has to do with the impact of the ashfall on buildings. But sir, I could have told everyone, based on the damage and loss assessment that we did in 2021, that that would be the outcome. It was in the report that many in this honorable place read and saw. We inhabit these spaces that we have to protect. And the way that we protect them so that we can live and work healthfully is through these kinds of investments. But sir, this is not just about a bank. This is about an ecosystem for development. And I'll say what I mean. An ecosystem is what? It is a group of things or processes or beings that work together, that must work together in order to create the kind of outcome or the kind of experience that we want to have. And so this is not just about a bank. It is also about the budgetary measures for 2024 that we heard earlier this year. Because while the Blue-Green Bank in its investment functions focuses on investing in businesses or projects for the development or commercialization of green and sustainable technologies, and on investing in businesses or projects pursuing climate mitigation, climate resilient, or climate adaptation strategies, investing in businesses that supply goods and services needed to develop or commercialize or needed for use in the blue and green sectors of the economy, and so on. While this bank goes to finance those things, we also have budgetary measures as follows, and I seek to remind the country through you, sir. An additional 25% non-refundable tax credit to boost the 50% research and development tax credit for projects related to the ocean and the greening of the economy. Sir, a 50% refundable tax credit for projects resulting in net zero emissions in Barbados. Sir, the budgetary measures introduced also make reference to coastal zone management a 50% tax credit that will be introduced for beach rehabilitation, coral reef restoration, and other marine conservation works approved by the Coastal Zone Management Unit. Sir, sustainability and resilience are not just concepts. If they are so in the head of the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, I encourage him to read the evidence that is before this House. That was uttered by the Honourable Minister of Finance, a member for St. Michael North East, in the budgetary measures that are being executed while the bank is being set up. Sir, imagine that you are able to have affordable access to finance from the Blue-Green Bank at the same time that you are able to attract these kinds of concessions on projects that are meant to improve the resilience of the country. This is not just putting an institution together and leaving it there. These are intentional policy steps that are meant to take us to the future that we want. And if the Honourable Leader of the Opposition does not understand what ideas in practice look like, ideas whose implementation are in flight, this is what it looks like. Because based on the individuals and the ideology with whom he now chooses to associate, he may not understand that. But this Barbados Labour Party government is in the habit of that. Not just words, but real execution. So imagine the savings, imagine the business that you can create when you have these concessions paired with the affordable financing from this bank, paired, sir. We've always said that we are not a tax and spend government. We understand that there are other ways to create the environment for these things to happen. That's why we brought new planning legislation to be able to govern how sustainable development occurs, physical development occurs in the country. That's why we brought a physical development plan to be able to govern the changing landscape of the country, and together to ensure that people can survive the changing climate, but can also use it as an industrial opportunity. The Sustainable Industrial Development Policy, sir, I don't like to be in the habit of talking about things to come, but that is the framework within which all of this is taking place. This is about being able not just to sit and say, oh, Kadir, the sea is rising. Oh, Kadir, the place getting hotter. But how can we make sure that that industrial transition, that AC to DC power, that solar PV, how do we ensure that it is not just thought about, but it is financed, that it is encouraged, sir? Sir, I will make as my final intervention the following. The idea of creating a financing pathway for all of what we have to do on climate, which is development, not climate and development. Response to the climate crisis, which is at the same time response to development. It is housing, it is water, it is infrastructure, it is industry. It came from the realization that the Green Climate Fund, notwithstanding the fact that in 2018, I was able to settle and sign a $46 million grant with the Green Climate Fund in my former dispensation as Minister in Economic Affairs, but that the team also followed that with an $80 million grant from the same Green Climate Fund to the same water sector some years after that. But when I was able to visit South Korea those years ago, what was the conversation that I had with the GCF? It was that, thank you for the trust and the confidence and the investment. But the truth is that these one-off, project-based kinds of approaches to changing the resilience profile of a whole country, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna cut it. Because just like that country that I visited that had the bridge mashed up and they had to mash up and buy back, Just like that country, that is the position we would find ourselves in if we keep taking a little bit and doing a thing and hoping for the best, and then taking another little bit and doing a thing. It has to be a whole of government, whole of country, whole of the national consciousness approach to how we set our development pathway. And so we settled then at that meeting in South Korea that we would have a programmatic approach to what we have to do to address the development pathway of the country. Sir, climate is development. And that programmatic approach you now find in the Rooster Reef program, you now find in the climate investment plan, you now find in the energy transition plan, and sir, you now find in this blue-green bank. Sir, I am confident, I am proud, and just like the turbulence in the skies, we seem to think that something that the world doesn't understand quite yet fully how to fix, that somehow, having given many of the answers already to the international financial institutions as little Barbados, but somehow we suggest that we must never be in the place of charting a path. We must always know. We must wake up knowing. We must know from jump. Sir, a lot of what the world is doing now around climate and resilience was birthed in this little Barbados. And so there is no doubt in my mind that this government and the people who we humbly serve have the wherewithal to take advantage of this new opportunity and to turn it into a future for themselves and their children. Sir, with those few words, I'm obliged to you.